The Human Condition, A User's Manual by Arnold Kunst, January 13th. How we walk with the broken speaks louder than how we sit with the great. Bill Burnett. Life in Prison, Part 1. I taught in a California state prison for 13 years and came to some conclusions about my convicted felon students that you may find enlightening. If you're born in the wrong place, / at the wrong time, / with the wrong skin pigmentation, trust me on this, the one-way road to prison is almost inevitable. It starts, I suppose, with a poverty that is as pervasive as it is inescapable. A kid that grows up poor will almost certainly grow up angry. Throw in a lack of or complete absence of meaningful parenting, breeding isn't the same thing, and he'll almost certainly decide that school is a waste of his time. From where he sits, that'll be a reasonable enough conclusion, since he'd probably score a good 2 years below average at reading by the age of 10. Sociologists that study these things assure us that third grade reading score is a virtually infallible sign that he's destined for a life as, quote, a consumer of correctional services, unquote. Consequently, one of his first major life choice decisions will be to drop out of school, like so many of his best buds. A decision made all the more disastrous than he can possibly imagine or may care to acknowledge. One of those consequences is the unquestioned enthronement of delusional thinking. For example, he's sure to make the mistake of misreading to himself what the American dream means. For him, it's a fairly simple matter and goes something like this: I've arrived, so bring it on. Unfortunately, although he doesn't realize it quite yet, life doesn't quite work that way. Abundance is there, of course, and a generous amount of it even has his name on it, but it doesn't just drop into his lap like ripe fruit from a tree. So much for galloping misconceptions. Too bad about chucking school. That's a wonderful place to find out about how the world we all live in actually works. Or he'll think the phrase dining experience is the same as Happy Meal. I remember like it was yesterday when my student, Mr. Thompson, a remarkably innocent-looking 19-year-old, peach, fuzz, beard, and all, found out that the Golden Arches doesn't provide a dining experience. It looked like someone had just killed his cat. Or he'll think it's all good if the only thing he does is break into the occasional car, or that he hasn't gotten caught yet. And when the cops do pick him up for something, but then let him go with barely a slap on the wrist, he'll conclude that they're all bark and no bite. Then it happens. He does something that isn't all that different from previous no consequences no-nos, but this time he gets more than a slap on the wrist. He appears before a judge, is assigned a lawyer who then doesn't provide very good representation. Maybe that lawyer can't even spell the kid's name. Maybe he's a racial bigot. Certainly the legal aid guy is both vastly overworked as well as vastly underpaid. The kid, of course, is looking for some kind of justification for his behavior and is ready to seize on any one or combination of those factors and come to believe it or them with ever-increasing fervor. Think Donald Trump writing off that Access Hollywood tape as, quote, locker room talk, unquote. Whatever about those justifications, the fact is that this kid, a mere blip on the radar screen, has been swept up into a bloated, underfunded universe whose primary focus is to feed itself, and though he may not realize it yet, he is well and truly at the bottom of a food chain he would much rather not know existed. Another factor, one he's not so inclined to put much faith in, is the fact that his behavior created a victim where there wasn't one before. In any event, here he is, an angry, scared kid, convicted in a court of law, caught up now in a world that he thinks eventually is going to grind him up and spit him out without a second thought. He will, of course, get older, but not necessarily wiser. Bummer.